Salutare, Omid Ghannadi sunt și am revenit cu încă un episod de RDW Talks din cadrul Romanian Design Week. Astăzi invitatul nostru este Matthias Hillner, curator în segmentul de designul de produs. Matthias este profesor universitar la Colegiul din Savana de Artă și de Design. Hello Matthias, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for being the part of the creators from product design section. I'm gonna go straight to the experience of Romanian Design Week. What did you find there? How is it? Were you expecting this?
Well, hello. Thanks for having me. I don't know. I didn't have too much time to ponder what to expect, but obviously I've seen the works that were selected for this particular section, and I've seen that in good detail, and I've learned a lot about it through reading through these statements. So I was indeed very hopeful. I've been around the world a fair bit and seen, design of great standard. So it's always, the question, what's next? What's next to be discovered? And I'm always sort of looking for, brilliance and, high standards. And I can say that I'm not disappointed. It's very impressive what we saw. So we judged the works on screen. It was clear that some of them were, finished products. Others were concepts that were visualized. Yeah. And so our concern was revolving around the, prototyping and the finishing and the production. And it is really very good in quality. And what really struck me, I went again last night, where things were a little quieter, and the curation in the sense of layout of the exhibition and the design overall is very, very impressive. It's very, very beautiful. The lighting, the distribution of work, the ambience, it's a very nice display and very enjoyable. So it's a great opportunity, and I think an honor to be here in person. I'm
really happy that you liked it. I'm curious if you kind of found some common sense in the approach in product design in Romania. If you have something that you think that are connecting the local context in the projects that you saw.
Yeah, so there was a lot of exploration of materials, and some of it, quite cutting edge, I dare to say, for lack of a better word. So there are, explorations in the context of textiles, sometimes bridging a little bit the disciplines, which is really interesting. And, material experiments. What I found, from the start is a strong attention to craftsmanship, which is good. There's also a sort of a lingering concern that people rely on craftsmanship too much and don't engage sufficiently with the conceptual side of things, because culture and society is changing and new needs are arising, but there was a lot of explorations in the context of lighting, and again, really interesting designs that do not just decorate a space, but actually, distribute light effectively, and furniture, and things that you need for home. So there is a pragmatism swinging with it, which is interesting and absolutely useful, not least because the designs are close to market as a consequence, potentially, if distribution can be secured. And sometimes it's an interesting reflection of the local culture. Products that are derived in terms of their visual language, their sort of semantics from architecture. So again, this is where we bridge different design disciplines, which is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, you see, you are specialized in, I've been reading about you, I have to be honest, about the service design, communication design, experience design, all these things which we have heard about them, maybe not, and we don't really know what they look like. Have you seen these aspects of design in Romanian Design Week in the projects you curated?
I saw the potential, and sometimes, so there was one piece of work that I remembered where you had a sort of a metal fence that could be converted into a seating position. So the notion of flexible furniture. And again, blending different functions. So this is where you start thinking about the environment. And actually Budapest, Bucharest.
Yeah.
So maybe you have to cut that one out.
Yeah, sure, we will do that.
So Bucharest and the part of city that we are in is very beautiful, and you see traditional architecture, historic architecture, well developed and maintained, and some other areas which are perhaps in need of further development, but you feel the culture and history, and I think this is. You have a lot of space. You have a positive energy flowing through the streets. People are relaxed and positive, and there's a lot of space to maneuver and light to travel through the spaces. And there are opportunities to think about how people navigate the city, so that you think more from a systemic angle rather than in a sort of fragmented sense. It is really a very recent discipline. So, when I started engaging in service design in, I think, 2012, 2013, that was 1 in 3 programs in the whole of the United Kingdom that you could go to study service design, and that one was incidentally completely new. So prior to that, there were only 2 of them. But this is also an opportunity, I think, for Romania and Romanian design to make headway and to be perhaps even a bit avant-gardist, if you like, because other design cultures, they are, very strongly attached to their heritage and their identity, and where design cultures are a little more younger, there can be more of a dynamism and more of a capacity to question status quo. And this is something that I experienced in Singapore, for instance, where design was unheard of in the 80s, or design in the sort of stricter sense.
Yeah. Actually, having Romania to be kind of growing in the product design segment, let's say, what's the impact, or how important are events as Romanian Design Week or other events such as for the evolution and for kind of pushing the evolution harder in this subject?
I think it's very important because here is where you can establish a consensus that can, be shared and travel through the layers of the institutions and help shape a culture. If people work in an isolated fashion, then you get different sort of directives, and you will find it difficult to shape an identity. So this is almost a bit of a dualistic situation. On the one hand, you need to be, aspirational in terms of quality and sort of also conceptually be ahead of times almost. Yeah. And on the other hand, you also need to build a consensus and strengthen each other as a design community and inspire each other. So I think I can't envisage any period in history where an individual would have, worked on their own account and developed a movement for argument's sake. So I think that cultural exchange is very important, and it's also very interesting about how you are connecting with the international community. So I had a conversation, I think it was last night or the evening before, we talked about Romanians not living in Romania. A lot of Romanians live in other countries.
Yes,
so that means that you are actually very strongly connected with international cultures. I had a former colleague of mine who I met the evening before last at the opening, and I worked with him at La Salle College of the Arts in Singapore years and years ago. He has since left. He's Romanian, so he's been working there for years, and then he went to the UK for a few years, then he went to Sweden for a few years, and I went other ways. But you see that there are people, in different parts of the world who can be your scouts, so to speak, and bring back the knowledge and insight, and you can make it your own here in Romania, and interpret it, building on your perspective and your cultural heritage, and see how you can take that into the future.
Absolutely. There's this one aspect which I think that needs to be talked about, is the connection with the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Because product design is for consumer, yeah, and especially because this is a question I have put to all my guests here at RDW Talks, but especially when it comes to product design, I think that there is a really special connection and relationship between the designer and the consumer, because everything around us is a product design. Even architecture is a product design, if we talk about it this way. So in a country like Romania, where product design is still growing, it's in the, let's say, getting to the middle age somehow. How important is that to get people, like non-professional people, to get connected with the designer communities, with the creative communities, and kind of make them feel each other, like the need and the answer to the need. How can we? I mean, how important is it, and how can we do it actually?
I think it's very important. It's a very good question as well, because what you want is that design and design communities aren't disjointed from culture and society. So there's historically there's always that sort of drive towards avant-garde practice, and sometimes and that's very valuable and important. But it also is important that we connect design with real life experiences, and in particular now where we have these developments in conjunction with experience design and service design, well underway. These practices cannot be carried out, without the engagement of the user and the audience. So there is a very strong co-creative need. But also what happens is that cultural discourse, into which design will be more and more embedded through engaging across design and non-design communities, you will dilute the borderline, the sort of distinction between designers and non-designers. But this is very valuable, because what we see is that creative practice and creative thinking is cross-pollinated to non-design communities, perhaps to the degree that you can't even sort of draw a line anymore. And we really need creative capability in order to take relevant decisions, be that in a design studio or in an architectural atelier, or be it in government departments or public service sector management, or be it in the private sector. So in particular in innovation-driven societies like Singapore, there's a strong ambition to introduce creative thinking and innovation-oriented thinking into management layers of companies and organizations in order to foster innovation and competitive advantages.
Yeah, you see, you're talking about this phenomenon of the need in the society. Yeah, there are companies. The country is already has the plans to grow, and they want these ideas, the creativity, and everything. And that's Singapore, for example. That's the best, let's say, example we could have here. But then you come here and see the designers kind of hustling with the future, you know. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna stay creative and somehow the chances are gonna come to me, a company is gonna see me, I don't wanna work for the company, I wanna invent something. You know, the challenges of being creative and most of the times being a young creative. Having your experience, what advice would you give to creative young, or not necessarily designers, product designers, to kind of get to the point which can satisfy them professionally and creativity?
That's a good question, because I think one of the things you need to do as a designer sometimes be defiant of surrounding circumstances. I remember the subtitle of James Dyson's autobiography is Against the Odds. And I think we almost need to, we definitely need to embrace obstacles and challenges as opportunities, and you know, sort of display a degree of resilience and perseverance. So we need to, I think a lot of designers have probably a bit of a rebellious streak in themselves, you know, from, you know, which sort of motivates them to do something out of the ordinary. And we need to sustain that, you know, and we need to build on that in order to, you know, generate the strength in order to prevail and sustain a degree of ideology. One of the things that is perhaps important to say is that there needs to be a strong effort in terms of awareness building when it comes to, you know, making a case for design and the benefit of design, and, you know, convincing, let's say, for example, governments and perhaps conservative, you know, leadership circles of the need for design. So the first steps are always the hardest, but once you can establish a few examples and sort of precedents where, you know, creative thinking leads to progress and allows to, you know, improve things at scale, you can make a strong you know, argument in favor of design and creative thinking. And indeed, you know, culture and society has always evolved through innovation, technically and in procedural terms. So this is where we just can't afford to rest on, you know, the historic efforts and achievements. We need to continue to push ourselves in order to, you know, drive the future and not be dragged along, as it were, because that's painful and certainly compromising.
It is also a very permissive, let's say, profession, being a product designer. I know talented artists, product designers who immigrated mostly towards graphic design, and I also know talented artists, product designers who immigrated more towards interior design. So it gives you the option to kind of push it in a way or the other. I have no idea if it is a good thing or bad, because I see product design in everything. I mean, even a poetry, from my point of view, can be a product design. And but what I know is that that thing, the thing which a designer, this microphone and the design of this laptop and everything, that's one point which is really hard to get as a designer, as a product designer. And I hope that in Romania, the way to get to this real, let's say, product design to become easier to get there as fast as possible, because there are, me as a designer, I go to Romanian Design Week or other events, and I see the projects, and I love them. They are good. There is this passion for crafting. There is this passion for being creative. But I think still that we are looking for opportunities, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're there. I think they are actually right in front of us. It's just that we look at them not with the right set of eyes in order to perceive them. So there was, I remember a former client of mine, a music label. They had a very interesting slogan. They said, it said, "Stick to what you don't know."
Yeah.
And that is almost paradoxical because it's counter nature. But if you think of what drives us towards creative practices, there's always a degree of curiosity that swings with it. And when we just perceive design professions as a sort of bread and butter work, then we lose that opportunity to explore and discover out of sight. So it's interesting. You mentioned that microphone, and I've just come from the Dali exhibition in Bucharest, and I was very impressed. First of all, of the quality of work and the way in which it was displayed, but also reminds me of Magritte, and of his piece of work that says "Ce n'est pas une pipe," right? So maybe "Ce n'est pas un microphone." Maybe there's a different way of looking at it, because what is it actually that it does? It connects us, it records, it generates history. So we need to perhaps look at what surrounds us with different sets of eyes in order to find new meanings, and also the products. You're quite right. I think it's very. In innovation we talk about the product to market, regardless whether we talk about digital solutions or systems, and I think that's really valuable. So the question is, what does the product do? Because in innovation we validate the quality of a design not based on its shape and form and the function that we associate, but the impact it has on, the difference it makes to people's lives. And so how can we pursue that difference? How can we, enhance people's lives? And, with products in the classical sense, you have, tooling, you have manufacturing, you've got distribution, you have all that sort of caveat of resources that you need to secure in order to stand a chance. And you don't have that in interior design so much, and certainly not in graphic design. And perhaps that's why it motivates people to sort of think across. But I think that transgressing of disciplinary boundaries is very, very valuable. So I've done that all the time, and not least because I was curious and I wanted to discover something new, and routine sort of gets in the way of discovery and curiosity. But also it's nourishing and inspiring. So I think we should embrace that. And because innovation always happens, at the cross-section of the disciplines or beyond the disciplinary boundaries. When we actually conceptually reframe, specific sets of circumstances or perspectives. So we put on a new set of, glasses, and all of a sudden we see something fundamentally different. And this is where we identify new opportunities. And it can be said that because, the world is so strongly interconnected, there's a great opportunity actually for, where locality almost doesn't matter. So and I think therein lies an opportunity for Romanian design to, fast forward the process and, to cover a few decades, within a matter of weeks or months, perhaps. But you need that courage, that confidence, and, that needs to be built step by step. And for that, you need to secure some precedents and, successes. And, Romanian Design Week is one of those things, It's really a standout event, very presentable.
That's fantastic, Matthias. Thank you very much for having this discussion. Thank you very much for your input. And thank you very much for being together with Romanian Design Week. It's a big value for this event. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your trip here in Bucharest. I'm sure see as much as possible.
I'm sure I will. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you
for having me.
Oameni buni, încă o discuție interesată, așa că nu uitați să dați acolo un like, comentariu, pe telefoane, trimis pe WhatsApp și peste tot la prieteni, să ajungă mesajul cât mai repede. Mulțumesc mult și ne vedem data viitoare.